Welcome to the Mid-Week Tease with me, Adelle Onyango, where I share some random and not too random thoughts on things. And in this episode, let's dive into this grief thing. So on the 31st of March, it's going to mark 13 years since my mom died. And boy, has it been a roller coaster of emotions. I think where I'm at this year, I can finally share a few thoughts on my grief journey that are very cohesive and may be illuminating for the things I've experienced with grief and maybe even the things I didn't get right. So I have about 8 things to share. I'll split them into 2. So I'm going to share 4 today and 4 more next week. The first one is there is such a deep loneliness that the death of a loved one brings you. I have never experienced such loneliness as what I experienced after my mom died, and to date, to be very honest. And because of how new this overwhelming loneliness was, I found that you could react by either freezing or fleeing. And for me, I fled. At the time my mom died, March 31st, 2012, I was in the ending stages of a relationship. And soon after my mom died, that relationship ended. And a month after that relationship ended, so something like maybe 2 or 3 months after my mom died, I was in a new relationship. That's how hard I fled. I was filling that deep void with relationships. Another thing that happened, not even a full year after my mom died, I moved jobs, right? So I filled the void not only with a relationship, but with a new job, with ambition, new friends, more money. I just kept throwing things at this void, right? And I did this for years. I want to say my current relationship is the first relationship since my mom died that isn't here to fill a void. Can you imagine that? 13 years. 13 years later. And the thing about this void is it needs acknowledgement. And within it, within the void, there are emotions that will demand to be felt. Which brings me to my next point. You can't intellectualize yourself out of grief. It carries with it very big feelings. Big feelings of loneliness, big feelings of despair, big feelings of sadness, big feelings of pain, big feelings of helplessness. And for me, I found that processing my feelings has 3 steps for me, all right? And so step 1 is intellectualizing, where I study the feeling almost in a detached way. It's my way of trying to gain understanding, but also since I'm a control freak, it's also my way of trying to gain control, especially with overwhelming emotions. The next step is feeling. Allowing the feeling to just rush across me, rush across my physical and my nervous system. And this second part happens from my neck down. It has nothing to do with my brain trying to make sense of things. That already happened in step 1. And then the last part for me is the rebirth. It's where I pick up what's left of myself and I pick up new birthed parts of myself, and I acknowledge them and keep moving, keep living. Those are my 3 steps. Now, with grieving my mom for years, I only did step 1. I intellectualized all feelings because I wanted this false sense of control over at least one thing death related. Like, death leaves you feeling so helpless that you have to confront how not in control you are. And so I feel like I stayed in step 1 to just feel like I have control. I think being in step one for so long is probably why I'm able to articulate my feelings related to grief so well, because I was there for like a good 8 to 9 years. It's only in the last 3 to 4 years that I have moved to step two. I've moved to feeling the emotions, allowed myself to cry in a way that felt like my physical being was finally moaning. I still remember one day being so overwhelmed with grief, and this was years back. I got home to our apartment at the time, rushed to the bathroom, and like literally was curled up on the floor crying. I called my aunt, who's such a dear friend, Auntie Jane, and she had also recently lost her mom, and she just listened to me crying. But literally, like, it was a shaky physical cry. And it was me finally allowing myself to feel, allowing myself to sit in the loneliness that comes with life's moments where I yearned for my mom to be there instead of rushing to fill that loneliness with people. I think what has been instrumental in the second part is just allowing myself to sit still in solitude and to feel. Which brings me to my next point. So now we're at point number 3. I have to get some tissue. I'm talking about feeling, and here come the tears. Anyway, the next point. Feeling the big emotions grief brings will feel like you are falling apart because you are. You know, a lot of things we deem true about life are completely shattered by the death of a loved one. These are truths that maybe our perception of the world or of life are based on. So, in confronting and feeling the emotions grief comes along with, we're also witnessing the breaking of self, which is so fucking scary, right? But with time, I found that experiences that break you are so necessary for growth. I think about 3 key things I've gone through in life as an adult, because childhood is a whole other whole other list. But 3 things I've gone through as an adult that I can say have broken me. I can now say I am so thankful for them. Not because I'm glorifying suffering, because I don't believe we should do that, but because the new parts of me that came out of that breaking, oh my God, I love this woman that I am now. Me saying that experiences that break you are necessary for growth doesn't mean you should go out seeking them, but should they happen upon your way, I think welcome them. Go through the motions. Be like water. Don't run away. Because these experiences have a way of introducing you to an expanded version of you. The last point I'll share in this episode, because I have more next week, is that everything has an end. I have a fierce belief in endings. When you're having a good night out, for those of us, well, I used to love going out. Not anymore. Give me my home any day. But back when I used to love a good night out, and you'd be dancing and you have the right set of friends, everything is great, and you just don't want the night to end. So you keep pushing it. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., you keep pushing it, 3 a.m., and then something terrible happens that ruins the good nights. It should have ended when it was meant to end. Believe in endings. Everything ends, and that's fine. That can be sad, but it's okay. I think of this as shock absorbers that allow me to embrace grief should I meet it again. I think of this truth as a reminder to really be in the present moment when experiencing things. I think I've gotten to the point where I have reframed my thoughts to be, how lucky was I to experience my mom so deeply for 23 years. We made an incredible number of memories that I can carry with me for life. And I take this energy or this reframing in to everything. If I'm having a good day, I know it's going to end. I'm not like, oh, please keep it going. I'm just like, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a wrap. And I'm glad I experienced it. If I'm hanging out with my person and I'm just like, this is wonderful. Like, this is, we're laughing and we like watching terrible movies and so laughing at a terrible movie or this, that, or the other. A long time back, I would be like, I don't want it to end. Let's keep going. Let's keep going past midnight. Keep going. Now I'm like, wow, I experienced this. It's ended, but wow, I got to experience this beautiful day, and I have an appreciation for endings. I think there is a quote that I love because I love sunsets. Oh, I love sunsets. And one of my favorite quotes says, sunsets are proof that even endings can be beautiful. Endings can be beautiful and we don't have to dread them because it sets us up for real failure when the ending inevitably comes. Grief has done a lot of things. It fueled my people pleasing in a way that was so hard to identify or pinpoint for a good decade. And this heavily contributed to me losing myself. But I need a whole episode to break this down for you. So we're going to do that next week. Thanks for listening to the Mid-Week Tease, a Legally Clueless Africa production. Episodes go out every Wednesday, and you can learn more about us by going to legallycluelessafrica.com.